Our guest today is documentary filmmaker Shola Lynch. Thank you so much for joining us. In your professional career, you've both acted in and produced films, but before that, you were an undergraduate at UT, right? Yes. So what was it like going from being a student to a filmmaker?
Well, my path is accidental. When I went to the University of Texas, I was a Lady Longhorn, hook 'em, have to plug. I was also in the Plan 2 honors program. And I wasn't sure what I wanted to be when I grew up, but I was trying to be an Olympian. And I found myself really attracted to history and philosophy and storytelling. Who are we as human beings but storytellers? And so that was the route that I found to filmmaking.
Wow, that's so interesting. So early on in your career, it says that you worked with Ken Burns on a documentary about Frank Lloyd Wright. What was it like to work with somebody who's such a legend in that industry?
Yes, my first job in filmmaking after undergraduate and then graduate school, I have a master's in American history and public history resource management. I wanted to curate. There were no jobs at historical institutions curating. There were cutbacks in the arts. And so I was really lucky to land this job with Ken Burns, who tells historical stories. My sweet spot, and it was kind of amazing. He has a very strong vision of the world, and to see him kind of direct this small army of people to implement his vision, I fell in love with the process, and I fell in love with finding different artifacts like a photo or a piece of film and being able to weave it together to tell a full story that could make you cry or get angry or, you know, emote in one way or the other. And also, my view of the world is not Ken Burns's. So I said to myself, well, what stories do I want to tell as Shola Lynch? And that's how I made my first film. No.
Oh, well, yeah. So one of your most recent projects you made in 2012 called Free Angela and All Political Prisoners, yes. Which is actually one of the reasons why you're visiting Tech today, because she's giving a lecture tomorrow. Can you just tell me a little bit about the project and what it was like to tell her side of the story?
Sure. You know, one of the things that happens, particularly with women's history and Black history, is there are all of these stories that we think we know and we don't really know the details of them. And hers is one of them. And I was attracted to it because she's known as this international political icon. You say her name and people either love her or hate her, and, you know, big fights begin. But very few people actually know the story of the crime and the politics and the passion that led to the FBI, her being on top of the FBI's list, and her acquittal by an all-white jury. People always think of her as guilty, and often people ask me, oh, did you have to go to Cuba to interview her? Well, no, that's Assata Shakur. Not Angela Davis, who was acquitted and has been a professor for decades since then. So I was really happy to have this invitation to come back to Texas and to Texas Tech to show the film, which we're showing tonight at the Alamo Drafthouse.
Okay, very cool. So I'm not sure if you're aware, but Angela Davis's lecture has stirred up some controversy on the Texas Tech campus. It's kind of been going around for a little bit. A group of students called the Young Republicans created a petition to prevent the lecture due to the higher cost of her lecture, like of bringing her here. As well as her past political views and her involvement with the Communist Party. So my question is that sort of controversy common whenever she comes here? Do you think that she's a good choice for an academic lecture?
I think she's a great choice for an academic lecturer because she's going to challenge you to think about ideas. And she is, you know, in part of her life she was a communist, but she never left the United States of America. She's an American. And the best thing about America is our ability to debate ideas. That is the whole point of democracy. And if you don't do it as a student when there are no repercussions, financial and otherwise, then when do you get to do it? So we should be embracing ideas that make us uncomfortable and sifting through them. She's not going to ask you to agree with her, but she's going to raise questions that could get you to think about the prison-industrial complex or the justice system. And also, it's such a false controversy. She hasn't been a communist for decades, you know? And so what I like to tell people is to watch the film so they know the facts of the story, and then talk about the facts. Let's discuss the facts, but let's not make a false controversy over somebody's supposed reputation.
Yeah, so do you know if she does stir up a lot of controversy, like when she does go to speak at other places? students?
Often people will, but they don't. Again, it's usually because they don't know the story, and they've also never heard her speak. I mean, I think it's one thing to complain about somebody before they get here, and it's another thing to go hear them speak and engage in conversation.
Yeah.
So I encourage all the students to watch the film and engage with her, and see what you possibly learn about yourself and about your own ideals.
Yeah, so finally, just here in the College of Media and Communications, there are a lot of students that are aspiring to be filmmakers. What kind of advice would you give to them to be as successful as you've been?
Well, one, be open-minded. You never know what's a good story and where it is. Follow your passion and learn to be very perseverant. It's a tough business, from developing a story to raising the money to, I mean, this film on Angela Davis took 8 years to make. Really? 8 years to make, and a third of the budget came from France. I had to go to another country to find money. They're not afraid of her as a communist. They're like, Angela, oh mais oui, she's a communist, no problem. Right? And so, I mean, it's also a very international story. And even the previous independent film that I made that premiered at Sundance in 2004 is on Shirley Chisholm, the first black woman elected to Congress. But it's her run for president in 1972. Did you know a black woman ran for president in 1972?
I was reading up on it.
Fantastic, fantastic. Yeah, and so these are important parts of our history and our past that include women and people of color that illuminate in some ways and underscore what is great about American democracy and also what's troubling. So let's keep debating it. If we don't debate it here at school, when are we going to do it?
Yeah, no, it's a good point to bring up. It's something that I personally haven't really thought of. You know, just like as a student, I have that liberty to question authority and stuff without repercussion.
Absolutely, this is the time to do it. And I'd have to say, looking back on my college career, I'm a New Yorker. I went to the University of Texas. And I learned more from debating and arguing with students from all different political backgrounds. You know, because in New York we'll be like, you know, on the right, they're not that bright. Well, you know what? That's not true. And so what I learned at the University of Texas is how to talk to people who didn't necessarily believe what I did and how to learn from them. And I think I cannot underscore that enough. That's the point of college. That's the point of being an educated person. You have to be able to listen and learn and take what works for you and keep it going, keep it moving.
Well, that's all the questions I have. I'm looking forward to hearing more from you. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. All right.